Greetings! A little bit different H3VR Devlog for you this week. I have just returned from back-to-back events. I was in Seattle from Tuesday to Thursday for Steam Dev Days, and then got back late last night and then shot over to Indiecade, happening over at USC, to give a talk with the other Rust guys on basically indie game marketing and community and things along that lines. If I seem a little out of it or stumbling over my words, it's that I have gotten not nearly enough sleep for the last couple days. But basically just wanted to give you guys a quick update, basically about the stuff that I was able to work on just before going to Steam Dev Days and what that event was like. So, in terms of Steam Dev Days, the single most exciting sort of VR related thing that I got to see and experience was that many of you might have seen this already going around, that Valve was testing out a sort of controller prototype, and I happened to be standing at the right place at the right moment to be right near the beginning of the line for that, and it was awesome. So if you haven't seen a picture of the controller, what's special about it is instead of being something that you actually need to hold, it's sort of clipped / held on via just the right amount of tension over this part of your hand so that you can actually let go of it completely and it stays in your hand. And instead of having some sort of grip button, they're just using a capacitive sensor to tell whether you have your hands open and shut. And that was one of those immediate sort of like that they had. I believe they had a scene from the gallery up for you to test it out, and it felt incredible just to be able to reflexively clench without having to aim at a button or even having that little bit of hesitation that one typically has pressing a button to grab. I did a whole bunch of things where I'd throw an object up and I'd overhand grab it just to see if the sort of reflex and my own sort of internal idea of when I should close my hand lined up in grabbing the object, and it just worked. It was really cool. You know, you had a back strap with a bunch of sensors here, and then the actual part that you could hold on to that still had like a trigger and such felt way more compact than the Vive wand and better sculpted to the hand. They also had a different sort of trackpad experiment on it that was dished inward that I quite liked, both because it was a bit smaller and you could tell where your finger was on the pad without looking at it, just because you could tell what part of the curvature was contacting your thumb. So I have to admit, the experiment got me super excited. I was telling folk afterward, like, if I could just steal these to play with right now, I would totally do so. But I'm curious, they didn't make any sort of mention of exactly how far along this was, or if they really intend to do a sort of mid-generation new controller update. But man, I hope they do. I'd buy it in a second. And in terms of something like H3, I could probably do what was necessary to make it work with that controller in an afternoon. So I think it's really neat that in addition to supporting the sort of third-party sort of open community for making custom track controllers and tracked objects, that it seems that, at least to a certain degree, Valve has interest in sort of also setting the bar for one themselves. So I hope they do it fast, because I want it. So that was really awesome, and it part and parcel of the thing that made this was my first Steam Dev Days, and it was an amazing vibe. Got to meet a whole lot of folk who I've known through like various VR dev channels since about like February or so, and got to see them in person for the first time, so that was wonderful. And just the overall vibe of just the way Valve runs their ship, I just really dig. There's a huge emphasis in the keynote and just the sort of philosophy that they seem to bring towards everything, which is creating this, big open platform and just like trying to lift everyone up alongside each other, and the degree to which they're investing in VR tech, and with a pretty just egalitarian approach to it, and the sort of freedom with which they're willing to communicate everything. Just it makes this a space that I'm proud to be a part of. So yeah, what else? Yeah, and then in terms of H3, the stuff, though, some of you might have seen, the quick video that I posted before Steam Dev Days, and then a thing on Twitter or two. But I've been finally going back and working a little bit more on the AI agents in H3, sort of making that system work more robustly, and then actually bringing the damage model over to it. So in a video I posted earlier in the week, Clunk now can take real damage from you, and they're basically it's a component-based model for him. So you can blow out his tracks, you can blow individual sensors off. If you penetrate through his turret armor, you can actually do sort of permanent damage that will result in him exploding. The sort of navigation controller for him is also in his base right below the turret controller. So if you're doing penetrating shots through there, you can also disable his navigation. I still need to tune it. It's really difficult because of the fact that the sort of ballistics and damage system in H3 aren't your typical... The rifle does 31 damage per shot, always. It's all physical parameters, and so I'm always sort of indirectly tuning the way a lot of that stuff works, and there are feedback loops where if you strike surfaces repeatedly, it actually structurally weakens them, so further shots in the same area do more damage. But it definitely means that when next week, when I push the next update, what ammunition you bring to fighting Clunk is really going to matter. And so if you're using handgun and SMG caliber ammunition and firearms, you're not going to be penetrating through his armor, so you're going to have to really strip down and disable him if you're playing without the steel plates. You're going to have to basically blow up all of his sensors, or sensors plus immobilize him, which does push, at least fighting the hard mode Clunk, pushes handguns and certain SMGs back into sort of a secondary weapon capability. Although eventually I do plan to add some armor-piercing rounds in 9 and 45, so that if you're like, I just want to use a G22 with a bunch of optics and I don't want to use a rifle, you'll be able to do that eventually, and still be able to take Clunk down more aggressively. But I did a whole bunch of testing with it on Sunday and Monday, and was just having a blast. I gotta admit, I wish I'd done it sooner. It's really fun to be able to, like, take a full auto rifle and sort of blind fire around the corner and actually have it do something to Clunk, instead of it just be like, well, I didn't hit the plate. If you could hear that, there's this wonderful, I think it's a taxi service, that has this irritating horn that interrupts me while I'm trying to work. Anyway, back to the point. See, tired ramble happening. And then the second thing you might have noticed on my Twitter, Slicer, which is this sort of dual buzzsaw flying robot, although in the Twitter video, not so flying yet at the moment. It's sort of my homage to the Half-Life 2 manhack, except a bit more terrifying. And Slicer's going to be the first robot that's really built for the new damage system in a big way, in that, lots of separate components, individual thrusters can be blown out on him, individual sensors, and I'm going to be porting over some code from another prototype I did months back. There was a sort of 6DOF one, where I have a fly-by-wire flight stability system that, based on the agent's desired velocity towards something, like ramming the player, it sort of goes out and pings available sensors and tries to use an assemblage of them to get the desired velocity that it wants. But obviously, if sensors are blown out, it can only do the best that it can. And so it should be a really enjoyable agent that, at the beginning, flies very, very capably and dodges capably. But as it gets in closer to you, if you manage to take it, damage it pretty severely, its flight behavior is going to become really erratic, and it sort of enters the second stage where it could just come, hit a wall and come spinning towards you. So you really have to have a sort of escape plan or something to hide behind. So it's just terrifying to deal with once with the headset on. So I can't wait to have you folks try it next week. So yeah, and then beyond that, just still working on more system stuff. I'm doing some lighting and performance tuning. I just saw a request on the subreddit asking for some more performance options. So those of you who want to turn off the bloom image effect independently, I will totally add that in next update. Let me see if we got anything else. I haven't been able to keep up with much of anything the past couple days. Item spawner still being worked on. Totally trying to get that out for this next update, because it irritates even me to work with. And also in regards to the locomotion cleanup, which is either going to hit in this update or the next, I'm going to try to get those quick presets in, because I know those of you who haven't watched all the devlogs don't know. You're like, wow, 3 pages with no context in options. So I'm going to make a bunch of handy presets and try to reorganize all of that so it's not so impenetrable. So anywho, that's about all I've got energy for today for you. I know this is shorter than normal and no cool VR stuff to exactly look at, but as soon as I'm done uploading and posting this, I'm going to go to sleep, even though it'll only be like 7. So, but I should have some, as I'm working on stuff though, over the next week, I'll probably post another preview video or 2, as I saw some folks being like, are we going to get the Deagle? You're going to get the Deagle this week, so don't worry, Deagle's coming this update. I want it at this point too. I've been looking at high frame rate footage to see that it's got a really unique muzzle flash to it. It actually tends to like ring slightly. You get this sort of ring of fire that comes out with the primary flash. So I want to build a visual effect for that. Because of course it's the Deagle. It's ridiculous. It needs to be. Even in something as sort of subtle and realist as H3 often is with the firearms, the Deagle's got to be it's got to be like 15% more ridiculous, because it's ridiculous. So yeah. Well, I'm just gonna keep rambling at this point because I'm so wiped. But hopefully this update was interesting to you, and I'll have some more cool stuff for you very, very soon. So yeah, peace.